Hey gamers, this is Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and we are back with another installment of our top 200 solo People's Choice commentary. This is a video for games 51 through 100, and I'm here once again with my wonderful panelists. So I have Marceline Lyman here with me. Marceline, you want to talk a little bit about what you do for people who might not have watched the first video?
Sure. If you didn't watch the first video, you might have been me, but even further from the past and fell asleep even earlier. So now you might be awake and you're in the middle of your REM cycle. I'm not quite sure. But in any case, I'm a game designer, freelance, and I am most known for my solo mode for the game by North Star Games, Oceans. As well as the official solo modes for Trekking the National Parks and Trekking the World 2nd Edition.
Excellent. Derek, tell us about yourself.
Well, for those that they haven't watched the first video, which you should go and watch, I'm Derek from Solo BG Podcast. Over 134 episodes already, so you can go and check out my content when I focus in solo and cooperative board games.
Hell yeah. And then Mike, who are you?
Hey, I'm Mike with the One Stop Co-op Shop. We have a YouTube channel. We have a podcast. I also design games, and we published our first game pretty recently. So, yay! And I designed some unofficial solo modes as well.
Beautiful. All right, so we've been talking about 101 through 200, but now we're getting into the meat of the list. We are at 51 through 100, and I always think this is a really interesting part of the list because you can see like what's ascendant and then like what old gods are still kind of hanging on, and it's just sort of an interesting space to be in. But are there any games that y'all are particularly excited to see in this part of the list?
I have a couple. Oh, you want to go first, Marceline?
Sure. I love to see Turing Machine on this part of the list because I think Turing Machine solo is so much fun. I mean, when you play multiplayer, it's basically also a solo game, but there's just something nice about doing a puzzle next to another person. I think that what I love to do with this game in particular, so the game comes packed with I think 20, 30 puzzles written into the rulebook, but it also has an app that has an infinite number of generated puzzles. So you can basically come back. You could just do any set amount of random puzzles, or you can do that day's daily puzzle. So if you're used to doing Wordle every day, you could totally do Turing Machine every day, which I did do at one point. I did Turing Machine every day for a week. Yeah, I just really like the idea of having this infinitely generating puzzle game that will just always be fun to me and always be very satisfying to put together physically. I think it really it's great that it exists as a board game. This could have been a digital game, but I think it just feels really good as a board game.
Now, I adore that one. I still own it. I got to get back to it at some point. So a couple I wanted to mention that are new to the list this year, as far as I can tell, and I think are just fabulous. The Seventh Citadel. I partially love the Seventh Continent and partially hate it. The Seventh Citadel, though, takes everything that I didn't like about the Seventh Continent, gets rid of that, and doubles down on all the stuff I liked and makes it even better. So that's a top game for me this year, probably a top game of all time, and it jumped right up to number 87 on the list, which is pretty dang impressive for its first year. And then Gloomhaven, Buttons and Bugs. I've somewhat fallen out of love with Gloomhaven, the big Gloomhaven, just that I don't have time to play it. And a lot of the time, all the campaign trappings, especially in Frosthaven, I really felt like the extra stuff, they made it more. And I was like, this is less fun, at least for my taste. But yeah, Buttons and Bugs. I'm like, oh, just the combat and in a solo fashion. And I can play it on an airplane table. That's great. So yeah, that one's awesome. And that jumped right to 81 on the list, which is pretty cool to see.
Excellent. Derek?
Well, I just have to say that I don't know if I should mention it right now, but I'm going to do it. And let me take a sip of my beer before I tell you this. There's a game that I have no clue, no idea why it's so low on the list. And probably Mike knows which game I'm talking about. I mean, is it okay if I already go into the list, or I'm going too fast?
Well, if it's in the 51 to 100, yeah.
51 to 100.
Yeah, well, sadly, it's on number 97, where this should be a number one or two. But I'm talking about Nemesis. I mean, come on, people. I mean, Nemesis is one of the most epic climatic experience that existed out there for solo epicness slash adventure slash killing slash dying slash surviving slash horror board game out there. So why in the world's in '97? I mean, that was out of the bat as we start this video, a big surprise for me. Like, I feel like this is probably one of the most, if not the masterpiece from Adam Kwapinski and remind me with the Awakened Realms. Awakened Realms. So I'm really surprised to see it all the way down to 97. I don't know what you guys' thought
You,
are about.
you know what's so funny, Derek?
I'm very meh on it. Don't hate me.
Well, no. I think it's a good game. I don't like it as much as you, but what's hilarious is that I don't know if you saw, Derek. I was like vigorously nodding with you as you started talking about the game because Nemesis is number 96, but it's in row 97. And the game that's actually ranked 97 is Bird Cycle. And I'm like, I love Bird Cycle. So when you were like, oh, it's only at number 97, I was like, yeah, it is. That's a travesty. That should be up to number 10. Come on. And then you were like, Nemesis. And I was like, oh, well, I'm not as excited about that. But I do like Nemesis. Actually, Derek, my favorite of the series is the upcoming one, Nemesis Retaliation. I like the slightly higher focus on combat, but I think the whole series is a lot of fun. So yeah, no, it's a good one.
I just want to say I'm super happy to see Halls of Hegra at 98. Halls of Hegra. So I mentioned Pavlov's House in the previous video. Love it, love it, love it. Halls of Hegra is an excellent, like kind of historical siege game, with just lots of different interesting interlocking mechanisms that I really, really highly recommend it. I highly enjoy it. It's quick, it's brutal, it's interesting, got good choices. So I'm super, super happy to see it break up into the top 100. I think it deserves it very much.
I do also want to call out Great Western Trail Second Edition. This is a second edition of Great Western Trail, but it came packaged with a solo mode that used to be a fan solo mode. So I think that's really, really awesome. And I think also just a testament to the community of people who make fan solo modes and also the cooperation of publishers who realize how many people love playing games solo, even if the designer might believe it's like, why would anyone play that solo? Or, but I think it's super, super cool that it exists. So kudos.
Yeah, it is surprising that that's the only version here. Maybe they just combined them all together. Because I don't know if any of y'all have played New Zealand solo or competitive, but as good as second edition is, I think New Zealand is easily my favorite of all the Great Western Trails, and the solo mode there is awesome. But yeah, I imagine, I know that they combined some other games. We had talked about this briefly in the first, actually, 51. Here, I'll call it out now. I didn't talk about it in the last episode. Here it is. They have Arkham Horror as a single game entry, Liz. They combined, I don't know, I guess Arkham Horror second edition and third edition. And hey, maybe the original first edition from the 80s or whatever it was by Richard Launius. That is all one game on this list, which is dumb. Okay, I'm sorry. That is dumb. Because even just Arkham Horror second edition versus third edition are completely different games, like with drastically different mechanics and stuff. So yeah, I'm sort of baffled. And if they combine like Great Western Trail and Great Western Trail New Zealand and Great Western Trail what's the South American one? If they can, Argentina. If they combine those, like I kind of understand it, but combining Arkham Horror Second Edition and Third Edition is a odd choice to say the least. And they don't even clarify which one this is. It just says Arkham Horror.
No,
I don't know.
Do you think it includes the card game as well? Like
no, because that I won't say where that is, but that is separate.
Okay.
But this is just
okay.
And Eldritch Horror is separate. This is just Arkham Horror or something, Who knows? Anyway, sorry, I'm done complaining. Man. Carry on.
There's also the interesting thing about there's a game here. Where did I see it? Because I'm as scrolling to the game. Raiders of the North Sea. They also don't specify if it's with the expansions or not. And I think I talked about this with you, Mike, about Raiders of the North Sea with the expansion. It has a fantastic solo mode that you can either get the deck of cards, which is impossible to get right now with the Automa because they're out of print. But if not, you can do it, download the app for the solo mode. And it does a fantastic job of just replacing that fake, right, or automa player, and he's great. I mean, I know at this point the Race of the North Sea it's on the app as well, and you can just play the whole game on an app. But if you're like me, that you still prefer that tactile aspect of it, like and take the apps away, well, this is a fantastic solo mode, and I think it went up 100, and if I read correctly, 122 uh, places. So it's good because I actually agree that this is a game that deserves more more recognition when it comes to solo mode. And this was one of the first one that Shem Phillips did, and it was probably the one that basically made a boost for his company. But yeah, I'm happy to see that Raiders of the North Sea is there, although they don't specify with expansions or not. So
I also want to shout, I'm very happy to see Ashes Reborn popping up
Mm.
so high. That's one that's really been growing on me with time. I'm like becoming quite fond of that game, and clearly I'm not the only one because it went up 79 spaces this year, and I think it deserves it. I mean, I'm really really happy to see it there. I think it's a good one, and I can see it having some longevity if they keep releasing some Red Rain stuff.
Liz, I didn't know you had played that. I love that game. I'm doing a video for every new release. Like, it's so much fun. I'm glad you like it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I've really been really really happy with that one.
Really wild to see the White Castle has jumped 377 places. I wonder what that is about. If it released like really early and some people got to vote on it
Yeah.
from 2 years ago.
It's been hot on social media this year. I've never played it, but I see it. Like I see pictures of it on Instagram and in like the solo groups on Facebook all the time.
I wonder, because I posted a somewhat scathing review of the solo mode in the White Castle. I wonder how many people playing it are using house rules to fix the difficulty. Because, it's fairly, I wouldn't say everyone, but fairly widely agreed that they totally botched the balancing of the solo mode in the official difficulty, and that you got to kind of like do some things to make the automa consistently like not too challenging. So I'm curious, I think once you do that, and it is very easy to fix, like it's a very easy variant to fix the difficulties. Maybe they just do it and don't talk about it. But yeah, I think with that fix, it's a solid Euro game. But I am curious if that is factoring into it or not, because I thought rules as written, I thought it was a kind of a bit of a trash fire of a solo experience because it was just so frustrating. One more I'll mention. I'm just amazed that it's still there. Space Hulk Death Angel.
I'm stunned.
Stop it.
No, Derek. Hold on, man. You're not understanding. I love this game. I actually went and found a used copy because I used to own it and I got rid of it and I regretted it so much. But what I'm talking about is that it went up 13 spaces to 73. It went up. It's been out of print for like 7 years or something, like 8 years.
Yeah, no.
I'm just impressed that enough people are finding it to vote it higher this year and to keep it in the top 100. Again, no shade to the game. Great, like random, frustrating, intense thematic experience. I love it. But it's funny to see it rising up so high.
You know what is interesting about that game, though, and I think, well, to begin with, I'm sure all of you guys will agree with me. The red die on that game is just one of the most hated dies ever in the history.
I hate it.
But not only that, the interesting thing is, like, you're right, like the game is out of print, and not to advertise anyone, but I have seen it so often-ish, if you want to call it that way, on some stores, at least around where I live, which is in Annapolis, Indiana, half-price books, right? Like those stores where you can find sometimes used games. I've seen some copies in those stores, but what is very hard to find, and good luck to all of you who are trying to chase down, is the expansions. Like, forget about it. You go to places like eBay and whatever, and they go like 300 or something just for a couple of expansions. But even with the base game, it's so hard to win just with the base game. Forget about everything else. That I feel like you don't need the expansions. You can just die and die over and over from that game. And I agree with you. It's one of my more exciting solo only small box thematic sci-fi game, and great design by Corey Kanishka. So yeah, I feel like it's one of those games that years will go by. I don't know what you guys think, but years will go by and you will still see it on top list of solo games.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I used to own the expansions before I sold them, and then I couldn't find them again. Yeah, I know. How terrible is that? And I think I just gave them away. I didn't even like sell it for the amount of money I could have gotten. and the expansion does make it easier. Specifically, one of the expansion teams had like this guy who could shoot missiles and just blow up 1 billion gene stealers. And I'm like, I want that guy. Like, I gotta print and play him or find like some image of him so I can just print him out because he was so freaking good.
Yeah.
So on this note, I want to point out there's some really good like oldies but goodies that are kind of clinging in here, and it makes me really happy to see. So Sentinels the Multiverse, an old favorite, still here, still strong, hanging out at 62. We've got Legendary Encounters, an alien deck building.
Yep. Excellent game.
Right.
Oh,
there's Agricola. There's Seventh Citadel. Great to see. I played that first time on TTS, and what was great about playing it on TTS is you have like an infinitely scaling map, whereas I have no space in my tiny New York City apartment to play Seventh Citadel.
It's a lot.
Go ahead. Sorry. I was going to say another one that is, I don't know what you guys think, but another one that is interesting to see. Not so much, I mean, the game is good, but it's one of the, at least to me, it gives me one of those weird vibes that the art, I'm not particularly a fan of it, which I know when it comes to art is very subjective. But in this one in particular, like, I'm going to say it, I hate the art. It's After the Virus. I mean,
I knew what you were talking about right away.
I mean, the game is great, mechanics are great, but I mean, the art, man, is just like, I cannot with it. It's just crazy to me.
You know what's funny about After the Virus, Derek, and about it being on this list because how high? It's pretty high, right? Where is it?
It's
number
actually
77.
Yeah. And they increased it by 20 this year.
Yeah. Well, they did come out with the Frozen expansion a year or two ago, so I guess that got it back in people's minds. But yeah, I called this the first time because I didn't like the solo play that much because it was so punishing. It felt so random how the cards came out and you would just die because too many zombies would come out at the wrong time. Somebody on our Discord told me it was one of their favorite 2-player games. So I got it again. I apparently, just like Space Hulk Death Angel, I like to buy games again after I buy them once. I got it again, and I played it 2- and 3-player with my kids, and I loved it because there's still randomness and there's still swinginess, but it's balanced a bit because you can kill each other's zombies. So if I have a terrible turn where I draw my zombies, but you don't, you can save my butt. And vice versa, if you have a terrible turn, we kind of have to both have a terrible turn at the same time. So the incidents in gameplay where I get totally destroyed and kind of lose through no fault of my own necessarily is much lower in co-op. So don't get me wrong, people voting for this for their favorite solo games, I think it's a great game overall. And I agree with Derek that the art is kind of terrible, at least for my subjective opinion. But I think for co-op, more than solo, I really love it. I would not rank this highly solo, but I really like it co-op. Or I guess you could do solo 2-handed, although that's kind of a lot of work with a deck builder.
Yeah. What about you, Marceline? Have you played it, like the After the Virus?
I have not. I actually don't really know anything about that game.
Look up the art at some point. You'll see some.
Sure.
You'll have some big bobbleheaded zombies in your nightmares. Yeah. Google it. Everyone, you're gonna watch first reaction.
Oh my God! It's like Mad TV. It's like, what is Mad Magazine like? What is happening here?
Now, it is interesting, Marceline. If you get a chance, look up The Long Cold, the expansion, because they kept the same art style, but they made it better. It's still weird and kind of uncanny, but
more refined.
Yeah, they refined the detail of it and stuff. So I showed it to my kids, and I was like, "Hey, which one's from the expansion?" They were like, "That's the expansion." I was like, "Yep." They're like, "Can we just play the game, Daddy? We don't care."
and while this comes back, I think another interesting game that it kind of falls into that realm of what you were mentioning, Mike, about the Arkham horror. They have on spot 88 Zombicide, but they don't say which Zombicide,
Right.
And my personal take on Zombies, I don't know about you guys, but I'm not a huge fan of solo games where you have too many characters that you have to control. Even if they don't have too many crazy abilities. I remember on the first editions of Zombicide, all the way up to the Marvel one and the Deceased one now by the characters from DC, you have to control 6 characters, no matter how many the amount of players. Now
No,
with the
I think
Marvel,
for Marvel it's 4. If I
for
remember
Marvel it's
correctly.
4, yes, and I was going to
Yeah,
mention that.
which I like a lot better.
Yeah, for me, like if you put me to choose, like if you have to keep one zombie side so far, it will have to be the Marvel one. Even if I'm not a huge fan of the IP. Now, when the DC one starts to deliver, I'm gonna keep that one for sure. But they're not specific about which zombie side, unless in the future video we will talk about a particular one. But at least here they just say zombie side number 88, would not increase or decrease from previous years.
It must
So
just be the whole series.
yeah, I would think so too.
But I'd say at least again, Zombicide compared to, Zombicide Green Horde compared to Marvel Zombicide, they have a lot of mechanics identical. You know what doesn't have necessarily a lot of mechanics identical? Arkham Horror 2nd Edition and Arkham Horror 3rd Edition.
You're still with that.
I'm not giving it up, man. They're very different games. I don't know.
Now, did you actually, guys? Did you like either the 2nd edition or 3rd edition of Arkham Horror? Now that Mike is insisting. Or
Oh,
not?
I'll die on the hill for 2nd edition. 3rd edition I like a little bit. I do think the story element, because who is it? I think Nikki Valens worked on that, and the story element is fantastic. Like I think it has much better like story and narrative than 2nd edition, but I found the gameplay more lacking for my taste, at least.
I have not played any of those games, but I'll take your word for it, Mike.
Well, Marceline, hit us with some of yours then. What are some ones that you have on this 51 to 100?
I thought I saw Palm Island. Is that real? Is Palm Island in the 50?
That's 165 on mine.
You know what? I just wanted to take that opportunity to talk about Palm Laboratory because that's nowhere on this list. It's just like way, way, way down there. It's like in the 500s. And I just wanted to say that is my most played solo game of this year.
Wow.
And I think it's wild that either maybe no one has played it because it was a add-on to a Kickstarter. It was kind of like not what the main Kickstarter was about. So it could be that not a lot of people know that it either exists, but what I understand is it's Palm Laboratory is like an adaptation of the original Palm Island, but adds strict win-loss conditions. And there are multiple scenarios that you can play too. And I think it's really, really good. I've played it a lot of times, multiple days in a row. When you can just like play it on your couch while you're watching Netflix, like you may as well just rack up some plays. But yeah, I also want to talk about what was it? We could talk about Buttons and Bugs again.
Yeah.
So the thing that you mentioned, Derek, was about controlling multiple characters. But I felt like with Gloomhaven, Buttons and Bugs, having one character, I actually felt kind of like cornered a lot in that game.
Yeah.
I felt like there's only ever one point of access. Like as a player, that's the only place you can play, position you can play from. I think it would have been more fun to see maybe the tactical options of having two characters at minimum. But at the same time, I ended up not loving Buttons and Bugs as much as I loved playing what is the mid-size one that's available at Target?
Jaws of the Lion.
Yeah. I loved Jaws of the Lion, and Buttons and Bugs was like felt very purely mechanical to me. So I ended up much preferring its older cousin.
Yeah, I still might also rank Jaws of the Lion above Buttons and Bugs, but I'd much rather play Buttons and Bugs than Frosthaven and Gloomhaven personally.
Right. Maybe in terms of solo, for sure.
Yeah. But hey, Derek, I know you'll be with me on this one. I just got to call out the plethora of giant, crazy narrative campaign games all really close together in the 51 to 100 bracket.
I know what you're saying. Yep. Bring it.
Yeah, we've got Oathsworn at 53.
Yeah.
ISS Vanguard at 55.
And then
Aeon Trespass Odyssey at 59. Like actually Earth, not as big, but Earthborn Rangers at 54. Another great like narrative adventure. Like, oh my gosh. All of those are bangers for me. I mean, I can't recommend them to everyone because they're going to cost you like $300 to $800, for everything. But and they'll eat up, like Marceline, you said you have a little place in New York. You're never gonna be able to play any of these unless you play them on the floor, and you'll have to leave them set up
Yeah.
for like weeks. But
I used to play Dead of Winter on the floor, so it's not unknown.
well, these are like 8 times the size of Dead of Winter. No, it's not even close.
And Marceline, now that you're mentioning, like that's very interesting. Like, and I was talking about this recently too. Well, before I jump into that, you miss a very good one that it should be once again on the top 10, at least for me. This War of Mine, the board game, it's on place 50 actually.
Oh, and
And it
I should
went.
say,
Yeah, that's the
oh,
next
wait.
video.
Oh, no. Derek, we're
That's
not on
the
50
wrong
yet.
video. Wrong video.
Hold on. Okay, let's
Don't worry,
take
we'll
it
cut it,
back.
we'll
take
cut
it
it,
back.
Rewind.
Yeah,
Spoiler,
listen.
spoiler.
Okay.
Derek,
Uh,
just say what you said about me missing a big one, but say Kingdom Death Monster at 65.
Kingdom Death
Then
Monster,
it'll all
yeah, that's
apply.
what I was talking. That's what I meant. Kingdom Death Monster.
That's, of
yeah,
course, what you meant. Yeah, that's
the
what you were
one,
talking about.
Yeah, very epic and very climatic and very immersive.
It is a very epic and big. It's great.
I'm fascinated by the trajectory of Kingdom Death Monster. I feel like it was super high, and now it's kind of like dropped a bit, and it's such a hard to access game financially and physically.
Mhm.
And
Well, but
so
it jumped up 59, which I would
Yeah.
attribute to the final delivery of the what's it called? Not the jester's chest, the something. You know what I'm talking about, Derek? The gambler's chest. The
Yes.
gambler's chest. People were waiting on that from Pooch for like 4 or 5 years, and
Mhm.
finally it delivered, and people seem to really, really love all the new content. So I think that's what's reinvigorated it to get it back in the top 100.
You know which
I'm
one I'm
curious.
surprised to see here? Like, also, I don't know about you guys if you guys had a chance to play it. Where is it? Frostpunk. I'm
Mhm.
surprised to see it
I
here
played it.
on place 83,
Yeah,
just
never
because
heard of it.
I backed it and I got all in everything. Like, I went crazy for it. And I remember doing the setup for the solo mode and playing it for the first time, and I was like, oh my god, like, it was just almost like a headache. I mean, it wasn't fun, at least for me, right? It was too many things to handle, and I think this is a perfect game for maybe two players. 3 players, you might spend like 6 hours or something there. So I don't know if I will be very motivated to try it. But for solo, it was one of my biggest disappointments from last year. I think it was. So I wanted to mention that. And Marceline, where you were talking about Dead of Winter, I'm surprised that it doesn't get the love it deserves when it comes to solo. I have played the Long Night a few times solo, like purely solo, like with of course without the trader, which I know is the main sweet spot and the main attractive of the game, to potentially have a trader there, someone that is going to backstab you and everyone is killed by the zombies. But it's actually a very fun survival game. So I just feel like it doesn't get the love that it should deserve. And it came to my mind when you were talking about Dead of Winter. So
I 100% agree. I think that game, I've never played it solo, but that sounds really fun. I have played it full co op, and I think it's also just a really good survival game. I've played it 2-player co op, 3-player co op,
Mhm.
with just knowing that usually they're teaching games, but usually it's just like really fun just to try and beat the machine.
I
Uh,
100% disagree. I think it is a
Uh,
mediocre to terrible co-op and solo game. I think the best
Okay.
mechanic in the
Okay.
game. Hold on. I think
Let me
even
get
taking
another
the
drink.
trader out, the best mechanic in Dead of Winter is the crossroad cards, and you don't have that in
Yes.
solo co-op either. So, and I feel like that's where all the fun narrative and like thematic wackiness comes from. So yeah,
Well, I think my favorite element of the game, yeah, I feel like people always mention the cards, the crossroads cards, but I think the noise tokens are a really fun
Yeah.
aspect of the game. I mean, it's part of that same mechanic that I think it's often criticized for, which is like the card digging. And yes, that is maybe an aspect of it that is not as fun as it could be. But it's also designed to be like possibly several hours like immersive kind of
Mhm.
trader experience. But yeah, I think if it could be reimagined as a smaller, tighter game, I could totally see it working with the card digging. But yeah, the sound mechanic I thought was really really fun and innovative. The one I wanted to bring up was Castles of Burgundy Special Edition.
Hmm.
I was really curious if it's which solo mode, because it came packed with two.
Yeah.
Which solo mode are people voting for? So there was the original solo mode that I have played, that is really fun, and I think feels pretty much like playing Castles of Burgundy, but now you're alone. But
Castle of Burgundy.
Castle of Burgundy.
Castle of Burgundy.
Thank you, Liz. And then there's the Terzi Burgundy solo mode, which I have not played. So I'm really curious if people could comment on which one they played and which one they voted for.
Yeah, and there's another, this is going into the 50s, but there's another game that has a very prominent official solo mode and a very prominent fan solo mode. And I'm curious, I haven't a guess of which one people are voting for, because I think it's the one that has the prevailing, like, more positive opinion behind it. But yeah, I'm curious too. Either way, Castles of Burgundy, great game. Liz, you dropped out for like 20 minutes. Do you have any games you want to shout out before we finish?
Oh, it wasn't that long, was it? Please, dear God. My internet was mean. Things I wanted to shout. So Witchcraft did in fact show up in this bit of the list. So we talked about it being the better game that Resist. Clearly, that's bearing out in the list. I am sad, not surprised, to see Onirim down at 95. That used to be a top 10. And I just kind of feel like as it drops, we should like give it its due.
A
Because
moment of silence for Onirum. Yeah.
yes, Lost in Dreams.
It's just unfortunately a much better app than it is a card game because of all the shuffling you have to do.
100%
Yes,
agree. 100% agree.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
See, I'll shuffle as a nervous tick, so I sort of enjoy the physical aspect of it. But it's also one of those things where it's a game that it's an old classic, but I would be very interested to see what somebody who's brand new to solo gaming thinks of Onirim having come up on a different set of solo games. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I will say it has one of the worst rule books I've read.
Oh, you haven't read enough rule books of that, Varsity.
Okay, that I've read a lot, but it's up there for me personally.
I think I've read 3 worse rule books this week that worse than Onirum.
Okay, but you probably read
I read
more rule books on
prototypes.
average.
Name and
Yeah.
shame.
No.
An Iron
Um,
2. No.
I have a question. Also, I do want to. I'm happy to see Race for the Galaxy still up here because I think that's like a classically nice like little solo bot. Is Dwarf Romantic actually good?
I
Never played the board game. I played the video game a lot. Did not play the board game. My assumption was that it's just the video game again, but this time you can count the tiles. you count cards. And
I've heard it's a lovely unlocking experience, and I am curious to play it with my kids. I personally would not seek it out for solo only.
If you're gonna play it solo, you should just play the video game. Was my internal take. That is of course not knowing what the cooperative vibe is like, because I do like sometimes playing cooperative games that feel like solo games where everyone is just kind of achieving the same goal. In this case, I feel like if I were to choose to play it solo, I might just prefer to play the video game where all the upkeep is done for me and there's way more like variation in the tiles.
Nice. All right, and then sort of the same question as the end of last video, since we're kind of moving into where we need to move on. If you could put any of these games up in the top 50, is there one that you would bump up because you think it deserves it?
Oh my god,
this is a rude question.
Yeah,
I'm a rude person.
So many.
I guess while they're looking list, I will start. I will say Paladins of the West Kingdom. I think that one has a great solo mode. I'm actually surprised that it went down by 17, but I particularly like it. And I think like even when you play the regular competitive game, it's almost like playing like multi-solitaire, which is not a problem for me, right? So I think it has a great solo mode. I think the theme is very well done. Once again, Shem Phillips tends to do very solid stuff. So that one, I think I will save if I could. And the one that I'm just a parenthesis, the one that I'm surprised to see here still, for the solo mode mainly, I adore the game as a multiplayer, and the production-wise is one of the most beautiful games that I have ever seen, especially when you have it all laid down on the table. It's Everdell. I'm surprised that it's in place 56. Just
Oh yeah, we
because
haven't even mentioned it this whole time.
yeah,
They
I
might
just,
be including the new solo bot that I've heard is much better from the
okay,
like the Dream Weaver, Night Weaver, I forget what it was called, the like spider solo bot expansion.
that might be yeah. But I was surprised to see it. If it was with the official solo mode, I was surprised to see it that high on the list, I guess. But yeah, Paladins of the West Kingdom, I will say it.
I will
My
save. No, my turn.
You-
I will save. I will. I will save Turing Machine.
I
think
would
it's such a
save
good game.
I would save a bunch. But one that I didn't mention, nobody mentioned yet, is ROVE, Results Oriented Versatile Explorer, the button
That's a
shy
good
18
one.
card one. Gosh, I adore that game. And now they have Rove Junior and Aqua Rove, which are equally fantastic. So yes, any of those are wonderful, quick little spatial puzzle games. I would put any of those into the top 50.
Yeah, those ones are so good. Definitely recommend it.
I have to say, I think Earthborn Rangers should go into the top 50.
I'm
It's
waiting
just
for
good.
I'm waiting for the expansion. Right now, it's like a 7.5 for me. I'm waiting for the expansion and more cards to build into my deck for like it to be an 8 or an 8.5.
I think it's gonna happen. I think it's just waiting to continue its rise. And then if you want a really rude question, if you could boot one from the top on
Okay.
half, do we
All
dare?
right, hold on.
Okay.
I'm just ready to get rid of Zombicide because I think it's a snooze.
Do it.
Let the hate flow.
I will do Frostpunk and After the Virus. Awful art. Just because of that. I don't want to. I already mentioned it. It's very subjective. I understand, but I don't care if the game is very good. I mean, you have to do something with that art. It's just it
I'm a
hurts.
wargamer and therefore very forgiving. So
Me too.
I think I'll kick out Buttons and Bugs. It just didn't really do. It just didn't really itch the. It didn't give me the satisfaction of what I expected out of it. It felt overly mechanical, and I don't know. It felt like we can make it small, so I don't know. It didn't really feel like it had the spark of what made Jaws of the Lion fun to me. Me having not played base game Gloomhaven or Frosthaven, I definitely felt like moving from Jaws to Buttons and Bugs a bit of a disappointment.
I'll boot Viticulture. I actually had not played this one much. This is a very early Stonemaier, and I tend to love Stonemaier, especially his recent ones are friggin' great. They're not designed by Jamie generally, but they are just amazing. But yeah, I played Viticulture, and I was like, oh, I played it like a few times. I was like, I feel like I'm doing the exact same thing every time. Like, I really feel like the paths to victory were extremely limited, and I generally don't love that for a Euro.
But once again, I wonder if they include the expansions on this.
Yeah, with Tuscany, or like there's a co-op
Yeah,
expansion, but even those I
yeah.
played with, and I was like, they're slightly better.
Okay,
It wasn't enough for me.
okay, okay.
amazing. All right. Any final thoughts before we move on
Wait,
to our...
Liz, what did you boot? Oh, you booted Zombicide. Never
I
mind.
did. I did.
Do you have a specific one you would boot, or is it the whole series?
Let's just say it's so boring. Mike forgot I mentioned it. So like,
Don't put your hate on me. I like Zombicide. I mean, I like Death May Die more, but I like Zombicide.
You know, Liz, we actually did not say which one we think would rise on naturally on its own.
oh, I think Earthborn Rangers is going to.
Earthborn
I think
Rangers
that's
is another
very
one.
clear. Yeah.
Yeah, Earthborn Rangers is another one like what I mentioned in the last video. Like Leviathan Wilds that got boosted by big channels, funded to an insane extent, and will be way higher when more people get to play it, I think.
Although, I'm going to make a fat prediction from something lower in the list.
I
think
what does that mean?
a big one.
Just
It's
a
like I'm going to go
Oh, a
big
big
prediction.
prediction. Okay, I've never heard that before.
A chonky prediction.
I'm gonna make
chunky
it-
prediction.
I'm gonna make a self
Down
prediction.
at
How about that?
a substantial prediction. So down at 252, got a little game called
Oh.
Dragons of Etchinstone, and I think that with a chip theory publication coming up for it in the near future.
I've never even heard of this. I didn't know chip theory.
I've
Exactly.
never heard of this.
Exactly. I think people are going to hear about it, and I think that it is going to pop off. I think that we could see it as high as like all the way into the top 100 next year.
Ooh, it's a Game Crafter game?
Yes.
It's a Game Crafter game? Oh my god.
Yes, but Chip Theory is going to redo it with a possible expansion, and I think that it's going to blow that game up.
Is it okay? I guess you can't really tell me more information than that, but dang.
I mean, it's just they've got it on a campaign preview on
oh,
GameFound,
that
and
exists.
that's what I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm definitely gonna do research on that.
Hey Liz,
So,
my
I think that,
game is on the list. I didn't even realize.
What game is what's your game on the list?
Flame and Fang, our first like self-published game is.
Where is it? Where
It's
is
at
it?
484. Good job, us, Peter and me.
You know what? That
Okay,
game
well
is
while we're
cute.
doing self shout outs, Oceans is at 552.
Let's go, Derek. Where's your game?
Hold up. And now that you're saying Fleming Fang, how do I? There's a Dragon Ball deck building game that has a solo mode.
What?
Apparently, yeah, I saw that's one below us, 485. I've never heard of that either. Liz, I know. Once some of your game designs start coming out, you'll be way above us probably on these lists.
I don't know. We'll see. If honestly, if anything that I make actually gets on this list, I will like cry happy tears because it would mean so much.
Let's make it happen,
But,
all
we'll
you
see.
voters
We'll
out
see.
there. Let's do it.
We're going for number one, baby.
That's right.
And before we go, I want to ask again: if someone that is watching the video knows about this Dragon Ball deck building game, please post the link on the comments so I can go and buy it or something. So thank you for your support.
Or put your eBay listing in the comments.
Yeah, please.
Free shipping.
Amazing.
Well, and while you're at it, send Derek the expansions for Space
for
Hulk.
Space Hulk. Yeah.
And if you
Oh,
have
man.
a Dragons of Etchenstone lying around, throw it in there too. As a
There we
go.
Amazing. All right, everybody out there, we'll be back soon with another installment on this of commentary on this amazing list. And thank you so much for watching. Happy gaming, everybody, and we'll be back.